Gentlemen,
Hi, Larry.
how are you, Mayor?
Oh, man, I feel amazing.
You're looking good, suave.
Man, I'm just a working man down here in the fields, man.
Welcome to this episode of How to Really Run a City, our deep dive into the mystery and mastery of big city leadership. I'm Larry Platt of the Philadelphia Citizen, a nonprofit, nonpartisan media organization that seeks to reinvigorate democracy in the American city where it was born. Check us out at thephiladelphiacitizen.org. If you've been with us before, you know the drill. The stars of our show, former Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter, former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, and really, this podcast is a testament to the notion that there are really three political parties in America: Democrats, Republicans, and mayors, who have no choice but to be practical problem solvers. On this episode, the mayors are joined by Devin Cotten. Devin is the founder and CEO of the Universal Basic Employment and Opportunity Initiative in Cleveland, Ohio. He's piloting the nation's first experiment in universal basic employment, a really innovative idea and investment in inner city jobs. And you'll also get a little insight into just what Mayor Reed drives. As a side note, Devin Cotten will be one of our featured speakers at the Ideas We Should Steal Festival presented by Comcast NBC Universal in Philadelphia, November 15th. And with that, here's this latest episode of How to Really Run a City.
Hey, Mayor, how are you?
Hey, man. How you doing? You looking good, bro? What's you doing? Daisy, all black, everything?
Man, what you mean? I'm all navy blue, and I was out selling cosmetics.
You were doing what?
I have an Avon route.
When you see Avon now, you'll say, Avon, wow.
We've got the twist, we've got the mist, we've got the bangles for your wrist.
I sell cosmetics door to door. This is what I use for my cosmetic sales when I go into the barbershops and beauty parlors, spreading the message of Kamala Harris for president.
Avon, wow.
Mayor Nutter is holding his stomach.
I'm infiltrating the barbershops and beauty parlors, baby.
With your Avon. Avon, oh my God.
Y'all don't need many of our listeners may not remember. There used to be a wonderful business called Avon, where if you sold enough Avon, you got a pink Cadillac.
Yeah.
You're just a political Willy Loman.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
Hey, so Mayor Reed, we missed you last time when we talked with Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott. And
I hated that.
And no problem, man. You're a busy man. But when I expressed the hope that maybe you'd pull a Mayor Nutter and call in from your car out there, and when you were in La La Land, Mayor Nutter asked me just what kind of ride I thought you had. So I said Porsche, and he said Lamborghini. So how do you get your gangster lean on?
Diamond in the back, sunroof top, big in the scene with a gangster lean. Woo-hoo.
No, I do the Rolls Royce Ghost. And then I do the I have a Cadillac CT5 for when I pick up clients and I need to look a little more conservative. But I do the Ghost. I love it. Makes me happy.
You know, that was going to be my next one. That was going to be my next one.
Diamond in the back.
Hey, man,
diamond in the back.
Always remember the one thing, it's not the cost of the Rolls Royce, it's keeping the thing running. You know what I mean? So you gotta take care of it like a little puppy. But I like it. It gets me from point A to point B.
That's great. That's great.
About 3 miles to the gallon.
Worse than that. I wish 20 miles a gallon, but I make up for it in other ways. You know, I walk to work every day. So I don't drive it that much.
Oh my God. This guy.
But I work across the street from my office. So I live at the Four Seasons. I walk across the street. So I don't really use a car. My office is across the street.
That's the Charles Barkley Four Seasons. Is that correct?
Yes, my neighbor. Yeah, we see each other when we're working out and getting fruit and making lattes and shakes and stuff.
Yeah, Charles doesn't exactly work out, although now he's dropped some weight.
He does. He does. No, he's in the gym all the time. I got to stand up for him. No, he's in the gym all the time. Yeah. I actually think he lost too much weight. I like Big Charles Barkley, but he's decided to live, so I've got to support that alone. Everybody missed you in Chicago, Mayor.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I know a good time was had by all.
Man, I tell you, the mayor of Chicago and the people of the city of Chicago deserve so much praise. They did a magnificent job. It's the one thing I definitely wanted to start the program with all of the scrutiny and all of the buildup. They did a magnificent, flawlessly executed convention. So to the people of Chicago, to our listeners in Chicago, you all were absolutely first class. And the convention got better every single day, culminating in what can only be ranked as a magnificent speech by our nominee.
No question. The opportunity for people to see the range and the depth
and the bench
of talent.
Oof. Yes.
Of talent.
Yeah.
And, Mary, you will recall that a younger man 20 years ago spoke in Boston.
Yes.
That maybe not a lot of people had heard of.
Yeah.
Even fewer could probably say his name. And he became a star that night.
Hello, Chicago. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
But he barely got into the LA convention. Remember, he didn't when he was trying to get into the LA convention.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, he was in the Boston convention. So they're a great time. That was my fifth one. So.
I don't think he had any trouble getting into this convention.
Yeah, I think he had it covered. I mean, although I think we were just so fortunate that the First Lady Michelle Obama's speech was spaced. It was the highlight of the convention for most folks, aside from, of course, the vice president becoming our nominee.
Affirmative action of generational wealth.
What? Wasn't it beautiful?
She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No.
Oh, man.
I mean, it was just all a lady.
Lord. Come on now.
You tell she had some time, didn't she? She had some time up at Martha's Vineyard to think. But she was ready.
How about the black job line?
Yeah.
My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell him?
Spoken from her feet. She felt it so strongly. What a terrific week.
Yeah, that was something else.
It was really nice to see the awareness of the podcast, though.
Oh, good to hear.
That's great.
Yeah, when I was on Media Row, a couple of folks inquired whether we were on Media Row, and I said we did not do that. So
we should have thought of that.
Yeah,
I should have thought of that.
Good stuff.
Before we get to our guest, let me play devil's advocate, not that I necessarily believe this, but David Brooks wrote something after the convention that I just want to get your reactions to. He wrote, the Democrats are not making a mistake by talking about abortion, obviously, but Democrats are making a big mistake by not talking more about how to create a growing economy, which is the number one issue on voters' minds. This was another night. This is Thursday night. This was another night when they seemed to have nothing to say about it. Do you guys feel there's a missing economic message?
No, I like David and respect him a lot. I think he wanted attention. I mean, give me a break. I mean, she did a full policy speech on the economy. The economy, I mean, President Clinton centered on the economy, and he laid it out better than everybody. Democrats, 50 million jobs.
50 million to one. Yeah.
Republicans, 1 million net. And there were fact checkers all over the convention. And the fact of the matter is, if you want a job, if you want growth, if you want prosperity, you support Democrats, whether you like pulling the D or not. So I think that President Clinton articulated that message. I think that the vice president has been focused on it like a laser. And I think that David, who's a serious man, just has a difficult place to write from because Donald Trump is so terrible.
Right.
Their standard bearer is so disgusting and terrible that it makes serious people, they have to really stretch to find a lane to talk about where you can't simply point out that the other person is a threat to the continued operation and functioning of the United States of America. Okay, what you said about Kamala Harris, okay. What you said about jobs, even though Democrats may create more jobs, yeah, okay. But the other guy, which is what we got to keep saying every place the other guy. You know, I'm dressed like I did because I was in a group of barbershops talking to Black men, having a real conversation about changing our language about this election. You cannot have a constant conversation where you put the vice president on the defense and let this guy get away with it because his name was in some rap songs. And so we're out here doing this grassroots work because, as you know, Mayor, they don't want 5% Black, but they just need a couple of points.
Right.
This whole game of them having any interest in a real relationship with the Black community is totally false, but they have the money to spend in a way where they're just trying to shave 2 or 3 points. And so folks like Mayor Nutter and I are going to have to be everywhere having conversations that we are stunned that we're having to have, right? Stunned. And stunned at the responses that we're getting from Black men. When you literally look at them and say, you got a mama? You got a daughter, man? I mean, if you got a Black daughter, do you know what it meant for her to see Kamala Harris?
Right.
And you talking to me about a stimulus check that he didn't even support the legislation for?
Right. That's where I was going to go. This whole idea that, well, he sent me a check. Well, first of all, it wasn't his money. Secondly, that was a long time ago. You probably spent that by me. But look at where things are. Look at what President Biden, Vice President Harris, and now Democratic nominee Harris have actually done for you. We know even from research that was recently released that the economic mobility of Black people in particular and people of color has actually gone up and is closing gaps. We're not where we need to be, but making progress. Donald Trump does not care about anybody but himself. And the motivation for his entire campaign is to win and then absolve himself, to pardon himself. Now, it's a strong motivator when you're facing, 90-some counts. That'll get you up every morning, but it has nothing to do with Black men or anybody else.
Yeah. Hey, I want to get to our guest, and it relates to that issue of economics and jobs. And I thought you guys would really be interested in this policy platform I want to welcome Devin Cotten is the founder and CEO of the Universal Basic Employment and Opportunity Initiative, which is piloting the nation's first experiment in universal basic employment. And I was real impressed with this guy and with this idea. So I wanted to put him through the gauntlet of two urban chief executives. Devin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going? I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be in conversation with you all.
We're thrilled to have you.
Tell us about your program.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I founded Universal Basic Employment with the mission to demonstrate that a federal jobs guarantee policy can eliminate poverty and be a stop payment on its many symptoms. We do this by subsidizing the salary and employment at $50,000 for 100 under and unemployed Clevelanders for 3 years to prove that a jobs guarantee policy is a simultaneous investment in people, place, and business. So that's like the mission and overarching theme. In a very practical sense, it imagines a world where a single head of household can walk down her street and receive and have a job that pays $50,000 at a grocery store, a nonprofit, a church, childcare center, and walk back up the street to a home that she owns because that now $50,000 salary allows her to be back in use of the private sector banking tools like a mortgage, a car loan, credit cards, and things like that. It makes her neighborhood a choice. It makes her neighborhood that she lives in a neighborhood of choice because the private sector now sees her and her neighbors as individuals that can buy groceries on a biweekly or weekly basis. They all have the capacity to pay for internet at $49.99 a month. So now we have a Spectrum Charter or AT&T or whoever else coming up and digging up a road that in a community that has historically suffered from digital divide and laying fiber optic cables because we now know that there are 10,000 customers that they can have in the area. So what we're trying to do is begin demonstrating what it means for our government to shift investments from reactive responsiveness to proactive solution that dignify historically low wage work, close the black-white racial wealth gap, and put the cities in a better position to solve the symptoms of poverty that are often left at their doorstep due to failed state and federal policies. And again, restore the individual agency and prosperity to the nearly 41 million Americans that currently live in poverty.
Tell me how you decided that this is what you were going to spend your life working on. Tell me how you got to the decision.
Yeah, it's a mix of professional and personal. So from a professional standpoint, I spent the last 6.5 and almost 7 years of my life working in community development in some of Cleveland's most disinvested communities. And so what I saw in that time working in community development is that our government subsidizes literally everything. It subsidizes roadways, businesses, real estate, literally everything. But we have failed to subsidize the individual agency and prosperity for, 41 million Americans that are currently living in poverty. And just realizing that if we can come up to the end of a real estate project and it has some red numbers at the end of it and saying like, oh, we're $1.5 million left away from making this new apartment building, shopping center or whatever happen, and the government coming in saying, hey, we'll give you that $1.5 million, $10 million, $100 million, whatever necessary, because it can serve as a loss leader for this multitude of positive things that can happen. Why can't we do the same thing with people? And then from a personal standpoint, I was obsessed with work at a very, very young age. And a lot of that comes from me realizing that my parents' income, specifically my dad's income, was the most statistically significant variable in my life. It wasn't Devin's efforts that were allowing me to succeed or go on to figure out any level of success, but it was the system that my parents' social and economic agency gave me and guaranteed a certain level of floor for me, and that there's no different than a child like me and a young person that grew up in a disadvantaged community besides the fact of the income of their parents. From that personal experience and being obsessed with work at a young age, my dad worked at GM, and GM kind of serves as my Ma Bell, and the big company that I look up to and have looked up to for so many years, and seeing the gratitude and the multitude of wins in that relationship between him going to work at General Motors every single day and being a UAW member and what that meant. I was telling Larry the first time we talked, we had UAW everything, or GMCA, GM GMAC everything. So that was the financing company from General Motors, and UAW, the union. There's a UAW Bible sitting on the coffee table in my parents' house. And so seeing that my parents were able to get a mortgage, car loans, insurance, and all these other types of things, either from GMAC or UAW, it made me realize that our economy works best when we have stabilized workers that are able to take advantage of the private sector system that is available, and that we can find this mutual relationship of wins between private firms and individuals when we have folks going to work to make enough money to do those things.
Thanks for laying that out. I want to, Devin, ask you about some of the mechanics of all this, and certainly for our listening audience. You mentioned $50,000 a couple times. Is that from UBE? Is that from the employer? How are people selected? It's a 3-year, commitment. Where does that money come from? I mean, just kind of the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I appreciate that and giving me a chance to kind of lay some of that out. So why $50,000? $50,000 using the Atlanta Federal Reserve benefit calculator. They have an amazing tool that I stumbled around and learned about. Lays out that for a single head of household with 2 kids under the age of 5 in Cuyahoga County, that income bridges them past the use of most social safety net benefits. We're keeping that child care one in place because whether you make $20,000 or $120,000, child care is really, really expensive. But for an individual with single head of household with 2 kids, $50,000 in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County allows you to have the individual agency to not use the social safety net benefits. $50,000 is the autonomous wage. And again, with the part of this work is around dignity and agency. So it gives you the autonomy to navigate your needs and wants as you see fit without going through the often dehumanizing process of our public benefit system. And so what that looks like in partnership with the United Way, UBE/United Way would write a check to a small business, let's say a small corner store. We would write a $250,000 check to that grocery store so that they can hire or elevate 5 employees up to an income of $50,000. And what we're asking the employer to do is to redirect the current wages of $13, $14, $15 an hour, whatever it is, back into employee benefits. Because we know in our country, not only do we have a wage issue, but we also have a job quality issue. Far too many people, particularly in the direct care space, so think about our home health aides, our certified nursing assistants, our childcare workers, are working some combination of right under full-time employment because the individual firm is choosing not to pay for benefits, or they're working a split of wages where they're working 20 hours at 123 home health aid and another 20 or 25 hours at X, Y, and Z health aid. And each one of those firms are looking at each other and saying, hey, you don't work for me full time, so why am I paying for your benefits? And additionally, we have a number of workers that are working full time and have a job that they receive benefits, and they are unfortunately too afraid to leave that job because they can't find a matching opportunity for them to have the benefits that cover their for the needs for them and their family as well. So UBE would cut a check to those small businesses, ask them to redirect the current wages into benefits. And so again, that's your health insurance, dental, medical, as well as PTO, FMLA, so many things that so many benefits that we currently don't see in our poverty wage and low wage jobs. And then over the 3 years, we want to measure the quantitative and qualitative aspects of how this intervention begins to eliminate and alleviate the burdens of poverty that show up in an individual's life, that shows up in that business, and that shows up in the community.
So tell me the process for selecting the 100 individuals. Aside from the mechanics of it, I want to hear about the emotional part of it.
Yeah, that's so selecting the individual. So we are concentrating this in a neighborhood of Cleveland, particularly on our east side, that we can begin infusing what would be $16.5 million directly into the hands of the residents. So once we pick a neighborhood, we would then pick businesses inside that neighborhood and see how many individuals within that business can be a part of our study. And once we have that number, say 75 employees that are within the businesses that are going to receive the subsidy are part of the study, we would then backfill using nonprofit partners and community development partners with 25 other individuals to round out the 100 individuals that would be a cohort in helping us lead the development of the nation's first universal basic employment / jobs guarantee pilot. And so you talked about the emotional side. So we're this is a people-centric movement. And one of the first things that we did in the development of this work is we started a human-centered design process. And so we brought 40 of the most proximate individuals, 40 most proximate voices to poverty into the design of this solution. So we brought in 20 business owners and 20 Black women to tell us everything that's wrong with this solution. And they all gave a resounding yes, that they could see this to be the solution that could solve the symptoms of poverty that show up in their individual lives, show up in the business, and show up in the community. An example that they had was that, hey, we were scheduling for folks to meet with their social worker and the wraparound supports that we're going to provide for individuals on a biweekly or monthly basis. And they said, hey, no. Folks need to be able to meet with this social worker once a week or daily, and to be able to drop in, make a call or something like that, because this is a significant transition for folks in their lives and folks in their families. We're going from folks using the public health system and having in Ohio example, an Ohio Buckeye health plan card or a Care Source card in their pocket, to all of a sudden now they have private health insurance. They may go from using and having $450 in SNAP EBT benefits to now they're self-managing and self-governing their own budget. So how do we support individuals in this pilot? So not only that they were able to succeed and survive the pilot, but they're able to thrive through.
So what are your results? If we were in an elevator and you had to tell me, what have you seen? What have you seen? What are the results?
The pilot kicks off in 2026, but so far we've seen from both the business and from the people side is that we're all trying to solve this problem. And we know that everyone wants to be the because of in their own story. We know that all the 20 women said that I don't necessarily like the status quo that we're having. I don't like what we're doing right now. I want to be able to go, and when my kids run out the door and they say, let's go get some ice cream, I'm not making a business decision. I'm just creating, and I have $5, $10 in my pocket to go spend quality time for my kids and navigate and be able to give them a want that they have in that moment, so we can sit down and talk about what they dream about and how their day in school was. We talked to our business community here in Cleveland, and they're all looking, and people are constantly reaching out and say, hey, I want to be a part of the pilot because I want to have enough employees to start the workday. I want my employees to have reliable transportation because they can pay for it, to show up at work on time. I want my employees to not have to be able to borrow or need to borrow $50 or $100 to make it through the weekend. And we know, and just having multiple conversations with our state, county, and city government, that they're willing to, that they want to think about how the indirect and direct costs of poverty are currently impacting the aspirational goals of our public system budgets.
So I just want to make clear that, as you said, the pilot doesn't start till 2026, but you have gotten city council on board. Mayor Justin Bibb, who I hear great things about, is on board, and the United Way. And I take it you're raising other monies. Mayors, what intrigued me about this, well, two things. One is that this is why I love cities, because young guys like Devin Cotten come around and they come up with ideas and then they make them happen. I just love that. But secondly, what this does, there's research out there that universal basic income does help, right? But this is I want to hear you guys on the political sell here, because this seems like an easier political sell to me because it's investing in actual jobs. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's definitely more elegant because the individual is earning it. And so you don't have to fight the political fight around some unearned grant for those that like to use that argument. I don't agree with that argument either, but I think this is probably more effective and will be more successful politically because you got somebody getting up and going to work just like all of us do every single day. And it's very hard for those with ill motives to hate on somebody that's getting up and going and doing the very best they can and carrying their share of the load every single day.
So I agree with everything that Mayor Reed said. I think if Mayor Reed or I were in office right now and you came and made the presentation, of course, our next question would be, well, how do we get 200, 300, 500? And what is the city's role and or responsibility in this effort?
Mm-hmm.
And the support from the city has been that those seed dollars to go in this 2-year runway to get us ready to run the pilot. The tough part about going larger than 100 individuals. Again, this is a $16.5 million intervention for 100 individuals. I'd love to do all 100 and something thousand folks that are currently living in Cleveland that are living in poverty, but that's where we think about our ultimate goals and ultimate resting place is state and federal legislation. And so what we're looking to do today is create a proof of concept with the smallest pilot that we can run that will allow us to get some statistical significance. And so what we're starting today on is the first piece in a larger movement to collect more literature to run this pilot in multiple cities across our country. And that's how we get to your point, Mayor Nutter. That's how we get to expanding this pilot past 100 people is going to other markets across the country.
What intrigued me about Mayor Nutter's question is, like, if I was in office. So if you guys are in office and Devin somehow gets in front of you, he probably does because he's got the support of a city council member and city council. So how tough are you on him on this idea? And what advice do you give him? This is an opportunity for him to hear from two elder statesmen who have been on the front lines of this issue.
Well, anytime you interact with government, tremendous amount of scrutiny, a lot of questions because it's the public's money. And so, where is it going? What is it about? How do we, what does success look like? What are the expectations? But I think it really is about the sustainability.
Yes.
Part of the question I asked earlier and the scale.
Yeah.
Whenever I did initiatives, I had what I called my tough team, meaning the folks that were typically the most skeptical around me. They were hope suppressors. Every government you have a wing of people that are hope suppressors, and they're necessary because, folks, I'm optimistic. I believe we can do it, and it needs to meet resistance. Mm-hmm. And that's what's exciting to me about this program. I think your force multiplier opportunity is we had an initiative that wasn't yours, but it was called the Hire One Initiative, where when we were in the worst of the recession, we partnered with the Atlanta Business Chronicle, which is our leading business publication. And every single time a company hired somebody, we announced that person. And it wasn't basic income, but it was championing businesses that made a hiring decision in a tough time. Mm-hmm. Similarly, I think you have a real force multiplier opportunity by holding up and putting these people in the faces of the corporate community to encourage them to do what they're doing, minus the funding.
Yeah.
Because, just like mayors, CEOs are only CEOs for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And all of them that I've encountered have a humanity to them. And this really moves nicely along with the CEO leadership mantle that I've seen in Atlanta, where we have a bunch of Fortune 500 businesses. So, my advice would be really go and do a deep dive on what has happened when businesses are highlighted for doing the right thing. I think you would be astounded. We got thousands of people hired because a bunch of companies have a bunch of cash that if they were aware of everything you're doing, they could lean in and really, really lift it up in a powerful way. So that would be my substantive advice to you if we were sitting around.
Yeah, I truly appreciate that advice and that feedback. It's super important to your point, Mayor Reed, about having the skepticism, to have people to pressure test this to see and allow it to get better. You know what I mean? The pressure makes diamonds. And, from going from a back of the napkin idea that I've been, kicking around and having so many no's and so many yeses and so many people poke holes and ask questions, we now have what we think is a full-blown strategy to solve one of the greatest ills in our country. We believe that if a worker and learner in our community or in any community can walk down the street to go work at their local church, in local grocery store or in their childcare center and make a $50,000 salary, what do you have to go pay me to go, get that bad job? That is backbreaking. That is long hours. Because what does that job actually work? And very quickly, one example I think about is our teacher assistants and our teachers. Due to the credentialing, the teacher gets paid at, a higher rate than the teacher assistant. But if you walk in, you guys have been in many classrooms. If you walk in a classroom, sometimes the person actually running the classroom is that teacher assistant that just has 25 years of informal and formal experience managing and understanding children. But because of credentialing and the way that our system recognizes credentials, they don't get paid at the same rate. But that person is doing very real work, and that person is so needed for the social, emotional, and educational development of our children. So therefore, we should pay them the rate that they need to be able to navigate the needs and wants that they have in their life.
Mayor Reed raises, of course, the issue of what he's really laying out is the role that government can play in so many areas. We generally cannot solve all of the problems, but often we initiate solutions. Larry, you may recall here in Philadelphia, I made a particular point and focus on how do we help returning citizens. Did a jobs fair, employers showed up, they understood clearly who the audience was. People walked out of that Pennsylvania Convention Center with jobs that day. That we would make a particular point to hire as a city government returning citizens. The whole idea here is I can't ask you to do something I'm not doing myself.
Yes.
Well, Devin, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I was so impressed with you. I wanted to introduce you to these guys, and I hope you keep us apprised of this experiment as it goes on. And I've invited you to the Philadelphia Ideas We Should Steal Festival for you to share your story there, because I do think we should be rewarding young innovators who are talking about investing in jobs in cities. And you've got a world of passion. So thank you so much for coming on and spending this time with us.
You've inspired us to add an applause machine.
Okay.
We need an applause machine for the podcast with folks like Devin, because I'm telling you, man, I'm going to go work another 5 hours today.
I appreciate this. No, I'm honored to be in conversation with you all and to glean a level of knowledge and experience from folks that have done this for so many years, and that I'm truly it's almost like riding in the car behind a plow on a snowy day. It's like, man, I got a little bit of snow there I got to deal with, but having folks like Mayor Reed and Mayor Nutter, you guys have many years ahead of me. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you all for having me on, and I look forward to being in conversation multiple times after this.
Devin, you really you really leaned into you really fed into Larry's whole Mayor Reed and I are old
elder statesmen,
and we're elder statesmen now, and you just fell right into the trap.
I did not mean to do that. I got to work on that one.
I mean, I'm sitting there, young man is saying, I'm gonna sit back and watch these two old lions. I'm gonna learn some stuff from. I
love it,
dude.
I'm an old salty dog. Yeah,
that was not what I meant. That's wisdom. That's yeah. No, you guys are still acting. You guys are
Devin, stop digging, brother. Stop digging.
It's all good. This is the podcast. This is what we do, and I led him right into that.
Yeah.
Devin, thanks, man. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you in Philly.
Yes. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
So that's awesome. As soon as he said that, I was, yeah, he helped me get a dig in.
Took him right down the path.
Well, that's it for this episode of How to Really Run a City. Remember, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends about us. We really want to widen the conversation. because by 2050, something like 2/3 of the world will live in cities. As cities go, so goes the nation, and so goes the world. For now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.